Hi there, everyone. A few early bird attendees coming in now, which is really good to see. Just to kick things off for people who are early on the webinar, I've thrown a poll up just to get an idea of exactly who we're speaking to today. The Workforce Wagestream have a lot of clients in different industries, so it'd be great to hear exactly where you're calling from, and also feel free to jump in the chat and tell us whereabouts in the world you are. That'd be great as well. Are we a bit of small talk while we're waiting for the people to come in? Are we all in London? Is that where we find you today, Emily and James?
Yes.
Yes.
King's Cross today.
King's Cross. Emily?
I'm in Fitzrovia. I'm not far from you, James. So.
Oh, happy days.
There you go. Workforce.com office is a little bit further east over in Shoreditch. So yeah, not too bad today. Just watching a few of those poll answers come in and waiting for a few more people to join. Still people rolling in. Absolutely, wherever you are in the UK or around the world. No, we had a few European registrations as well, so feel free to jump into the chat and say good day while we're just waiting for a few more people to jump on. Excellent. And I know we've got a lot to cover today, so I'm pretty keen to crack in right on 10. I know people's time is very valuable, so we'll crack on. Keep those answers coming in the poll, and I might start, by some introductions. So going over the agenda here, we're going to meet our panelists very quickly. We're going to set the scene and run through the topic, and then we're going to crack into some discussions about those 4 ways you can help your business and your staff combat the staff shortages, but also the cost of living pressures that we're seeing go on around the country and around the world at the moment. So I might throw over to you, James, if you want to give yourself a quick introduction to everyone online today.
Yeah, hi, I'm James Watson. I'm a managing partner of B Recruitment. I've worked for B for, I'm in my 8th year now. It's literally, I think it was my work anniversary a couple of days ago for joining the company. I'm an ex-hospitality operator. I've run many bars and restaurants over my years. I've been lucky enough to own 3 of my own restaurants a few years back as well. And now I look after the ops side of the recruitment for B Recruitment.
Excellent. And Emily?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Emily Tratt. I'm Head of Impact and Inclusion at Wagestream. So Wagestream is the financial wellbeing app for frontline workers. And my job is a policy role. So my job is to make sure that the products and services we deliver actually do have a positive social impact and they help people's lives. And so I work directly with our users, doing things like co-creation activities. I work with our charity backers and our impact advisory board. And I also do a lot of partnering with academics to do sort of deep research into the topics around financial inclusion and how to improve financial well-being, particularly for those who are on hourly pay.
Excellent. Very good. And my name is Rod. I'm the General Manager of Workforce.com. I've been working in this business for 6 years, and Workforce.com has been in the UK for 5 years, but it's actually our 10th birthday this year. And but before, I'm a very happily retired financial advisor. So some of this financial impact stuff, it still strikes a chord with my former life. I wanted to just very quickly for the attendees say, what we ask of you, we love it when our webinars get interactive. So please jump in, get involved in the chat. ask questions as we go. We'll try to answer them. I'll try and squeeze them in if they're appropriate as we go. But if not, we'll have we'll type in or come back to you if it's not quite the right time. And I'm not sure if my launch polls button is working, but if you do see a poll come up, please get involved and give us your answers there. To kick off, obviously, we're looking today at cost of living pressures and the staff shortages, which have been going on for some time now, and everyone's heard plenty about. But when I was reading the State of Wellbeing Cost of Living report that Wagestream put together with the Money and Pension Service and Work Foundation, this stat really stood out, and I thought maybe Emily, you could speak to this with Wagestream doing this study. What strikes you, or what's most concerning about this stat to you?
I mean, as you say, I think it speaks for itself. So we kind of take the pulse of financial well-being now on a quarterly basis, and we survey sort of large swathes of employers as well as employees. And there's this real gap between what employers think they're doing or say they're doing and what employees actually perceive. And so the problem with this is, as an employer, if you're thinking you've done what you need to be doing to support your workforce, but actually they're not feeling that. If they're not feeling it, it hasn't happened. And so this sort of big impact gap means that employers aren't thinking that they need to do more, when actually in reality they do need to do more to support their workforce. And they need to do more things that are really sort of felt and perceived by their workforce. So I think sometimes, I mean, I can go on about this forever, so I'll pause there. We'll get into the meat of it. But sometimes people think that kind of education on itself is the answer, and it's just not. You have to do a real thing to support your workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very telling. And it's a shame when people are trying to make that effort and it's not actually landing. It's a real loss of effort. So we wanted to dive straight into those four things that we think really make an impact when we're trying to balance these things. And one of the things that we're hearing at Workforce a lot is, it's just, maybe not the right time. But I think our lived experiences in all of our roles is that the businesses and people who are succeeding, that's not necessarily the case. So I thought I might throw to you first off, James, here. And on the recruitment side, what are you seeing? What sort of interest are you seeing from candidates? Because that's what people are trying to attract people to their business or keep people in their business. What questions are you getting about systems and software from candidates in this process?
A huge amount. I mean, again, it's hugely varied. The sort of the three questions or the 3 points that I always get asked is, who am I going to work with? How many hours am I going to work? And then what am I going to get paid? And that pay side is hugely dependent on the other two. But a lot of people they're very worried about the impact of sort of rising living costs are having on them. They are asking sort of frequency of being paid, the systems, the process, the procedures that employers are offering at the moment to allow them, one, not necessarily just to access those, but two, to also assist them in their current living, down to even free meals on shifts. If they're not being provided, that can add up hugely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess how in depth do they go into asking? I think some of the things that we see from employers is that this won't make an impact. We're trying to please staff, but systems just aren't a focus. Do they ask specifically? About which systems, or is there a relationship there that goes back to the goals of the employer?
I think it's a bit of both. We are getting more and more questions from those hourly paid staff and more junior staff on those systems, but it's also education on that side as well. Post-COVID, or pre-COVID, I should say, there was a lot of sort of almost blinkered mentality. It's always been like this. It's never going to change, especially in the hospitality trade. And coming out of it, people are kind of going, well, no, it's not right. We're not being paid fairly. We're working overtime and not getting it. We're working 60, 70 hours, but only getting paid for our 48 or our contracted hours. People are much more au fait. Their eyes have been opened, those blinkers have been taken off, and they are asking about it, but when you come down and actually when we can explain things like workforce, like Wagestream, and go that this is what the employer is actually offering, is a huge attraction point for those candidates to that employer. But it's coming down to the education of both parties, of the employer and the candidate or employee.
I think that's interesting, because some of the questions that I know from previous discussions with you, Jay, that people ask is like, they do ask how much they're going to get paid, right? People obviously that's a factor, but it's not the only question people ask or that drives people to work. There's other questions too, and pay's not always the first one either.
No, as I said earlier, I mean, the three main ones, no matter what sort of level I recruit for, whether it's a junior chef, a junior front of house manager, or right up to operations directors, MDs, and everything in between. The three main, there's usually sort of 5 or 6, but the three main ones I always get is, who am I going to work with? What am I going to learn? What am I going to learn? What am I going to get paid? And how many hours I'm going to work? The pay is usually the last one, because it's dependent on the other two. If they're working with an inspirational leader or an inspirational company that's doing things for the country, for the globe, for the world, sort of, I know, sort of planting extra trees, but also they're looking after their health, their well-being, their mental health. Mental health is huge at the moment, and they're all interlinked. And everybody, more and more people are asking what the company actually stands for, what it's all about, but what they can do to assist them in their outside lives, not just their work lives, because work doesn't, especially in the hospitality trade, work doesn't always just stop at the door.
No, absolutely not. And Emily, are you seeing any pushback on your side of investing in systems, or alternatively, what have you seen from the companies doing well on this front?
Yeah, the companies doing well are investing in their systems, and there's nothing worse than kind of a bad workforce management or payroll system, which means it's hard to roster your staff, it's hard to swap shifts, it's hard to pay people correctly. And so those who are doing really well, who are actually attracting staff and who are retaining them, are those who've nailed that. They've made it really easy to roster. They've made it really easy to see what's coming up. They've connected to Wagestream so that people have really clear visibility over the hours they've worked and the pay they're going to receive, and they've made it really easy to get paid. So those things actually really matter a lot. So kind of, when you're thinking about the job, as James says, he's got his big questions, but actually when you're in the job and sort of the enjoyment you get out of it, and kind of the respect you have for the company, and kind of the feeling like you're being well looked after, comes down to things working well, being paid the right amount on time, getting the right shifts, being sort of turning up to those shifts, like knowing that they're there. It's the basics, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. We see those sorts of questions. It's not always the administrators that come through our support line. So people love when they have an easy way to pick up more work. They love it when their system can make them do their core jobs properly, or get out of the back office, right? Get out of the admin and focus on those core jobs, or even just tracking their KPIs. Some people have targets that they need to hit, and if they've got systems in place and it's very clear to them, that makes it a lot easier for people to work through those things. I wanted to go on to the next one that we've seen a bit of interest in, and I'll throw over to you, Emily, on this one. Why is offering a payroll savings product a good idea?
Yeah, I warned Rod I could talk the entire webinar about this, so I'll try and be really succinct. Payroll savings is hugely successful, and there's a piece of research that says individuals are 56% more likely to save if it's offered through payroll than if they have to do it on their own, and that is across any income threshold. So think of the power as an employer to help your workforce kind of get on that savings ladder and start building that cushion just by offering it through a payroll system, because you're making it easy, you're taking some of the decision-making kind of out of them, you're working with a trusted provider. And it's really important, especially going into a cost of living squeeze. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but now is the moment to get people saving, and now is the moment to help people build that habit. And the beauty of payroll savings is it happens every payday. So even if you have to consume your savings and spend them because something came up, you start again next payday. And it's just a wonderful, almost magical product that if you don't do it, like, please do it today. It's so important. I'll stop there.
No, that's all right. When you talk about it, I do hark back to my financial planning days, and some savvy listeners will have picked up that I am not from the UK. I'm actually Australian, but in Australia, you get taxed throughout the year, and when you earn more, you get taxed more, and the government gives it back to you at the end of the year. And people used to think that this was great because, and I used to do my head in because they weren't earning interest. But it's like when they don't have to think about it, when they don't have the money, when they don't see it, they automatically save. But if it hits their bank account, they do it. So despite losing any possible interest or investment, people were happy to do it back there. So when I see a product like this on the market, I think that's great because people can do it before it hits their account, but they can also take the benefits of it throughout the year. I know these sorts of things are new, but James, have you seen many people taking this up or asking about this sort of style of product on your front?
It's starting to come more and more of interest to people because exactly as you say, if it's taken away literally at the point of it sort of almost hitting your bank account and bounces straight out, you haven't got it, you're not used to having it, and you kind of almost forget about it. My wife definitely does that to our joint account. So it's people are, as you said, being controlled. One of the biggest things we see when people apply for roles and come to us is, why are you leaving? I wasn't looked after. I wasn't paid correctly for what I did. I did 80, 90 hours last week. I got paid 48. I've got an issue with my wages. I've got an issue here. If people can see it, people actually, that's the main thing.
Transparency.
Exactly. Many times we've come and gone, have you actually spoken to anybody? No. They won't speak. Whether it's embarrassment or again, just lack of education on this subject, that people just go, no, they haven't done it right, so I'm out. And that's one of the biggest staff turnovers.
There's a real benefit for that to the business as well. We know that one of our clients, this was consuming their HR offer all of their time as queries about, and it wasn't even that they were paying them wrong. It's just that people didn't understand how they were getting paid. So by implementing systems where that was then visible to the employees, the HR officer then all of a sudden had a whole amount of time free where she wasn't answering these questions of employees that thought they were being gutted. And you can imagine how that might be perceived by employees too if they're not sure, having to ask those questions. That you just don't, you want to avoid those situations if you can at all.
Rod, adding to that, we launched to one large pub chain, and they reduced their payroll queries by 40% just by having the visibility in the app of what's happening with your shifts. And it pushed all the work downstream to line managers. So it suddenly meant that individuals could see before payday what shifts had been approved and what they were going to get paid for. And if something was wrong, they would raise it with their line manager before payday. And it just revolutionized the payroll team's ability to kind of work really effectively just by pushing that downstream and giving people that visibility. So yeah, hearing you on that as well.
Is it 40% you said, Emily?
40%
yeah.
reduction.
So
and this is an organization with tens of thousands of employees. So you can imagine the cost savings and time savings on that.
Yeah, and when we talk about those cost of living pressures, exactly that. This is an example of getting return on investment straight away, so that the business can become more productive. I've got one question which I might answer live now, even though we're tight for time, very quickly. How easy is it to use these apps on a day-to-day basis? And I mean, myself and Emily are a little bit biased there, James. So maybe a quick insight into your experience of how this is, particularly when you've got an older generation or they might be anti-tech. How have you found it? Have you had any feedback from people adopting these sorts of systems?
To be honest, not really. The way we act and what we see is from the candidates asking about them, and then the employer at interview stage or throughout will take it from there. So with regards to the workforce side of it, I wish I definitely had it in my operational sort of days, because again, Rod, as we've sort of spoken about, but also as with Wagestream, my last restaurant, again, mentioning no names, it was a large restaurant. I had 57 front of house, 28 back house staff. And as you said, Emily, the biggest thing was coming down. I'd see the rotas, I'd go through, and we put everything on the payroll. But then come payday or a few days afterwards, I'd have annoyed staff. We may have missed a shift here, a shift there, and especially now with the cost of living increasing, it's the strain it's putting on people. If they're expecting, if they're expecting here and they're getting down here, instantly you've lost a staff member. You've lost their trust. We were saying this the other day, Rod, that the problem is once you lose that trust, it's very hard to get it back. Yeah, exactly. So you've got. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say from outside too. You know, I know that we've tested our app on someone who didn't even have a smartphone. They actually, you know, we do user testing a lot. I'm sure Wagestream do the same thing. This particular person was put in for this testing by his wife, who did have a smartphone. So he came in, you know, called us, found it. So we're passionate about. We very much understand that that's our industry. And I would say from the Wagestream side, we've had a mutual client go ahead this week, and I think they're already at you know, almost 40% staff adoption. So that's amazing to see that in 2 days. So it can be done, and we do think about those things a lot at Workforce, and I'm sure at Wagestream too. I wanted to move on very quickly to earned wage access, and I know that you know, there's some people that feel funny about this, but I'm a big believer that when you're getting monthly pay, this is a great enhancement. So I guess the first question, Emily, is why do people feel funny about this? What are their objections? And to anyone on the webinar who has those objections, throw them in now, please.
Yeah, it is a funny one, because some people feel uncomfortable with giving people access to their pay, and there's this assumption that we're doing people a favor by paying them on a fixed cadence, whether it's monthly or every 4 weeks, and we're not. That's not for people, that's for businesses. That's because it's convenient for us to run payroll on that cadence, and it's convenient for us to sort of tot shifts up and figure it all out. But for individuals, particularly when you have a workforce who is maybe on lower pay, so they might be on the living wage or kind of around that margin, a huge proportion of those individuals don't have any savings. So, you know, 20% of the population has less than £100 in savings, and they're living paycheck to paycheck. And so getting access to their pay to smooth out their cash flows, if a bill comes before payday, being able to pay for it from your earned wages, it's your money, rather than having a £25 late payment fee, just feels really rational. I see someone saying they pay on a weekly basis, and that's brilliant. And there's also like lots of reasons people feel like accessing your wages will leave you short, or you're borrowing from yourself. And I think there's this assumption that people with little money have little money because they're bad with money, rather than people with little money have little money because they're paid little money. And so there's this thought that people will just waste it. And we know from all of our data and all of our research that people are acutely aware that it's their pay, that they're managing their budgets really tightly, and they're making smart choices about how and when to access their pay to either pay a bill or pay down existing debt, or if they're financially excluded and they don't have access to credit cards and overdrafts, to use it as an everyday payment mechanism. But often the decision makers about whether to offer that to their employees are not people in those same circumstances. They probably do have more than £100 in savings. They probably do have access to credit cards and overdrafts. They're probably not wrestling with, you know, extortionate payday loan or catalog debt. So they don't really understand why it's useful for somebody. And so they kind of put themselves in those shoes and go, well, I don't get it. I wouldn't use this. Whereas actually the feedback we see, and if you look at our Trustpilot page and when we speak to our users, they describe it as a lifeline. Somebody yesterday said, I would die without Wagestream. You know, I would not be able to feed my family. Just it's a timing point of view. And if we all paid everybody daily, happy days. You know, we don't need things like Wagestream. But if you're paying on a fixed cadence, you are holding back cash from your employees, and it's not fair.
And James, on the staff side of things, is this sort of thing a question that comes up? And yeah,
every time, and I couldn't agree more, Emily. When you say certain people, and I've had employers when they made job offers, we've questioned them about the time. Well, they should better manage their money. It's not about that. It literally is, because they are paid. They're low paid staff. They're not necessarily low skilled. They're low paid, and having that, and we've had people turn down jobs going, I can't do it. I need to be paid minimum every 2 weeks. Ideally, I needed to have it every week. And exactly as you said, it's their money. They've earned it.
And there's a
Give them access to it.
question. There's a question in the Q&A about, does Wagestream do much to support staff on how to spend and save money? And the answer is absolutely. And without sort of derailing this whole webinar, we have trained financial coaches you can chat with live in app. We have the savings product, including micro savings, where you can round down the pennies from every shift worked and save those. We have banking tools connected, things like low balance alerts and payment alerts. We have grocery store discount vouchers baked into the app to make spending more sort of affordable. So you can buy your groceries at kind of 95p to the pound. There's a ton of information and education in there to help people kind of build a budget, manage their spending, manage what they're doing with their money, save, and sort of get themselves into a better financial circumstance. So if anyone wants a sort of a full demo of that, we can do that kind of at a later date. I'll share my contact details at the end. At the end of this session.
Yeah, we'll absolutely get to that. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Ahmed as well, who is paying weekly. It's it's great if you're doing those things, and then it's those other sorts of benefits that Emily was just talking about that can really come in and come to the fore. The savings product, those sorts of things that complement Wagestream. I know we've got one more area to get through, and then we'll come to that other question if we can. But I think this is the one that a lot of people are battling with, and now's not the time, or our focus is elsewhere. And I think when we hear stats like Emily's of a 40% reduction, I'm not sure how people can afford not to do this sort of thing. If you're struggling to attract staff, if you're spending time trying to attract and recruit staff, and you're losing out, how can you afford not to do these things? So it would be good to hear some of the other objections in the chat that people might be getting. But I mean, there's some employers, I think, on the financial wellbeing front that say, they're a bit nervous to get involved in employees' financial lives almost. What would you say to them, Emily?
I would say you're already involved in their lives because you pay them. So you are already the #1 contributor to their financial well-being because you give them their pay. So don't think that getting deeper involved in their financial lives is problematic. That train has gone. You're on it. So sort of like feel free to round that out and think about what you can do to enhance that pay and sort of the broader benefits package that will make somebody really well off beyond just the value of the pounds and pennies you pay them.
And James, from the candidate or the employee side, is there a view that you have on that, or do you have any feelings about employers nervous about that side of things?
Yes, I mean, look, you look at some of the best employers out there. It's because they do get involved with their employees' lives. They don't overstep their mark. They give them, again, to use that word, Rod, they've got the transparency there. It's here if you need us. We're here to help. Communicate to us, talk to us, tell us what's going on. Again, going back to our original point of when you get paid and they've missed a few shifts, so you're not completely sure of why you've been paid that much rather than this much, is the communication, is the transparency. The ship has already sailed. You've got an annoyed, disheartened employee. If you offer all these things now at the start, and we're here to help, we're here to make sure you're better, you're happier, you've got what you've earned, then in theory, you shouldn't be short-staffed having to do extra hours because everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's there to help each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will come to that question. I just wanted to get to this slide as well, which I think rounds out the message, and it just proves that, like, when employers do take this interest and do it effectively and communicate effectively and implement effectively, it makes a difference. And no doubt the link to this study will be in the follow-up to this webinar. But yeah, it's just a really powerful thing that can be done. I wanted to quickly throw that question that's in the Q&A to Emily. Do you have any data about the average frequency and amount that employees are using and wage access?
Yeah, and so, I mean, it's a great question, and we have 2 minutes left, and so I'll give you the really short answer, which is over time, that amount decreases. So we see over time people getting themselves into a better financial situation where their usage declines, they use it later in the pay cycle, and they take a smaller amount of money. The average is around 2 times.
And that's a good thing.
That's
right?
a good thing. That's what we want to see. We want to see that usage declining. The average is around 2 times a month, but that average sort of hides a huge amount of richness and nuance. And some people will use it not at all. And some people, for example, those who don't have access to mainstream financial products, will use it like their everyday payment mechanism. So some people will use it quite a lot. So although the average is low, there's a lot of sort of detail and richness underneath that average, and there's lots of different use cases that we can step through, you know, if we had another half an hour. But what we see, the long-term trend is that people improve their financial situation. They're better able to save. They're better able to sort of get themselves in a positive cash flow situation. And that's what we're here to do. You know, we are backed by charities such as Joseph Rowntree Foundation and Fair by Design. We are here to help people improve their financial well-being. That's the focus of my job. This is what I live and breathe every day. So if that number wasn't going in that direction, I'd be very concerned about it.
Fantastic idea. Fantastic that we've covered off the subject for the next webinar now. That's fantastic. When we do have another half hour, we'll be sure to get onto that. I've just changed the slides here and put our contact details up on the screen. We can circulate them after, but if anyone has been so inspired by what they've heard today that they want to jump on email right now and contact us, there are our emails, and please do so. I want to thank you, James. Is there any final comments that you have in our final minute here?
Well, the only thing, one of the things I mentioned to you the other day, Rod, and this is not a sales pitch for your 2 other businesses, but one of the stats that sort of we work towards is if you've got to replace a staff member, be that floor, be that kitchen, be that management, whatever, on average it costs you 3 times their salary while you're getting them recruited, trained, and inducted. So those that kind of go, well, no, we can't afford this. We've got to look, exactly as you said earlier on, looking at other things. This isn't important to us. Yeah, it is. It's probably one of the most important things. Retention. We are, as a recruitment agency, we are turning away business left, right, and centre because we are so busy because everybody needs staff at the moment. But it's those companies, we are working with those companies that look after, that have that culture, look after those people, look after their teams. And we're shying away from those that don't.
And Emily, any final comments from you before we go? And thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo James, but give the other side of that story, which is it's urgent right now to support the financial well-being of your workforce. It's urgent. The October price cap on energy is coming. People are already really stretched. It's not a do later thing. You need to be doing something right now to show your staff that you care, but also help them get themselves in a better financial situation. So it's important from a business point of view. You'll save that 3 times their cost, but it's so important from an individual point of view as well. And really think hard about anything you can do, anything within your gift. Today, tomorrow, this week, it's so important.
Absolutely. And look, I want to thank everyone else on the line for joining us too. Sorry for not getting the chat up and running earlier, but it's been great. We've kept all our attendees right the way through the webinar, which is fantastic to see. Please reach out if you do want to follow up in any way. And I'll leave you all to get back into the front line and back to your businesses where that time is so important. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.